Mallory, I am grateful for you, and I'm grateful to have you here today. So thank you so much for driving all the way from Tyler to hang out with me for a little bit.
Of course.
So tell everybody just a little bit about you.
A little bit about me.
I don't know how much you want to go into, but like a little bit.
A little bit about me, yeah. So my name is Mallory Pendergast. I currently am working as a speech pathologist in an elementary school, and it is quite literally my entire joy right now. Like finding getting to work with kids in such a happy, positive environment has been so amazing. A little bit about me: I actually lost my husband to brain cancer 4 months ago now. It was in May, and so I've just been kind of navigating life after that, life after loss and life with grief, and just trying to find, I guess, my footing again, and where I'm finding joy. And also, Garrett had a pretty long fight with cancer. He was diagnosed in November of 2022, and then he passed in May of this year.
So was he diagnosed before or after your engagement?
He was diagnosed 3 months after we got engaged. Yeah, so we got engaged in July of 2022. He was diagnosed in November, and then we didn't get married until September 2023. Yeah.
So, and she was also Miss Texas in 2021.
Yes, I was also Miss Texas, yeah.
She competed in the Miss America organization forever. I met her when she was 8 years old.
There's just so many things.
I met you when you were 8, literally playing the fiddle at a little mock pageant scenario, because your sister was one of my very first clients ever, Morgan.
Wow, yeah.
She was.
2005, I think, is when we first got started in the Miss America organization.
So the year she was Frisco's teen.
Yeah,
she was my very first group of clients I ever worked with in my whole life.
So fun.
So I feel like I'm a Fuller sister.
Yes.
Or aunt or something.
We have a lot of Fuller sisters, actually.
Part of the family.
Yeah, you are.
So let's talk about defining moments, because I feel like there's probably been many. You can share more than one. What's a defining moment in your life?
Oh, goodness. I think that there definitely has been multiple defining moments in my life, but I think the one that does stand out to me the most is meeting my husband, Garrett. I feel like I kind of became a different person when I met Garrett.
Do tell.
So I actually met Garrett during COVID. So a little bit of backstory. I won the title of Miss Colleyville in 2019. Yeah, October 2019. And then was getting ready to compete in Miss Texas. We all know May 2020 happened, COVID, so Miss Texas was postponed to the next year. And I met Garrett in August of 2020. And I honestly credit a lot of my success in Miss Texas to Garrett, which, let me also say this, working with you and working on the mental side of things was the most important step in the Miss Texas side of things. But I think when I met Garrett, and he, the way that he affirmed me and the way that he just believed in me wholeheartedly.
Helped you believe in you.
Helped me believe in me, yeah. I think, I've always dealt with body image issues and self-esteem and all of that. And so having him in my life to be a constant hey, no, you are really great. You can do this, and you are going to win Miss Texas. He told me every day, he said, you are going to win Miss Texas. And I was like, okay. And eventually I let myself believe him. And so I think that's how I became a different person.
So let's talk about it. You met him where?
Yeah. So I met him. The story. Okay. So we actually knew each other through an organization at Texas A&M called Impact, which is a Christian camp that freshmen go to get them plugged into the local church in the Bryan College Station area. So we were both co-chairs for Impact, but there are 60 co-chairs. So it's not like we were the only two co-chairs. Yes, it's a very big big organization. So we knew of each other. I had seen him, he had seen me, and we both mutually thought that the other person was cute and we were attracted to them. But we both are more on the shy side. And so
you were never going to make the first move.
I was never going to make the first move, but he always says that he thought he had no shot. So we knew of each other, and then, like I said, we met in August of 2020. I had posted a Instagram story of a book that I had read. It was actually a book on dating, a Christian dating book.
Was it outdated?
No, it wasn't outdated. It was Single, Dating, Engaged, Married by Ben Stewart.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Loved the book. I posted it that I had read it, and I was asking for book recommendations. And Garrett recommended another Christian dating book called The Sacred Search, if you've ever heard of that one.
Ooh, okay, cute.
And I actually already had the book, which was kind of funny that I had the book, but I hadn't read it yet because I tried to read it my freshman year of college, but yeah, you just never finished it. I just never read it. But yeah, and because I thought he was cute, I took the opportunity to message him back, and then we started texting, and he drove from Houston to Tyler to take me on a date, and then the rest was history.
So did you know first date?
I think I knew before the first date, actually. Our first date was very awkward.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It was very awkward. And honestly, it's weird looking back, knowing that I knew before I even met him. But just like the conversations that we had when we were texting, getting to know each other before we went on the first date, and then just knowing the kind of person that he was.
So was he just really intentional with how he communicated and what he...
Very, very much so. But yes, after the first date, it was like, okay, yeah.
I could see it. Mm-hmm. And then y'all never stopped.
Nope. We actually never had a, we are boyfriend-girlfriend talk.
Oh, I love that, though.
We had our first date, and then...
just never talked to anybody else.
Yeah, that was it.
Did y'all ever check in one day and go, you really aren't dating anybody else, right? I mean, did you ever have that?
I think it was just kind of unspoken.
See, that happened with my husband and I.
Okay.
We never had the, will you be my girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever.
Define the relationship. They call it DTR now. DTR.
Of course, because we have to have an acronym for everything. We never had a DTR moment. Yeah. Several months in, he's like, and I don't remember who started it, but one was like, are you dating anybody else? I'm like, no. Are you? No. Oh, okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't like this serious, will you be? It was just kind of like understood. It just naturally, which I don't think it's necessary to have a DTR moment, but I don't think it's a bad thing if you do it. It's fine. Whatever.
Right.
All right. So walk us through. So y'all meet.
Yes.
I feel like now I'm on one of those kind of talk shows where I'm like, let's get, which that's not the point, but it's fine. So tell me a little bit about, you said that he was so affirming to you, the way he talked to you, you're going to win, you're going to win. And then you won.
Yeah.
So what was that like a little bit?
With him?
In general.
Just in general, yeah. Well, so Garrett moved to Tyler, which is where we lived and I live now, in March of 2021. And then,
like for a job or for
me?
For you? Oh, okay.
For a job, yeah. It was for a job.
But he was looking in Tyler for a reason.
Yeah. So he moved,
again, intentional boy.
Intentional, very, very intentional. He moved to Tyler in March, and then I won Miss Texas in June, and I moved to Dallas for the year to be Miss Texas. So we were like not short distance. We were long distance for like the first couple of months, and then got to live in the same city for 3 months. Then I moved to Dallas, so we were long distance again for a year, and then we got engaged 2 weeks after I gave up my title as Miss Texas. He was very excited and eager and ready to get engaged. But yeah, sometimes I look back on Miss Texas, and it, in some ways, like, it feels like yesterday, and then in other ways, I'm like, who is that person? Who is that? Like, that's not me.
Well, you've lived a life since then. Like, you've gone through a lot.
That's true. But I loved being Miss Texas. It was my dream since I was 5 years old, and there definitely were hard days, and, you know, being a title holder, there's different pressures that you go through, and then, you know, the job itself can be grueling, like very long days traveling from one end of Texas to the other in one day. But I loved it. Like, I loved getting to meet so many different people, and then also getting to share my platform, which was suicide prevention, and getting to talk about mental health with kiddos was really fun.
And you were very sought after because of your subject matter. So you were in a lot of middle schools and high schools, not just elementary schools.
Yes. So I would say it was probably 50-50, honestly. I did a lot of high school programs where we actually talked about suicide. We talked about the warning signs. We talked about what you can do if you might be struggling, if a friend is struggling. But then on the other side of that, I also got to go to the elementary schools where I took my book, which is called Henry's Happy Heart. And we talked about treating your mental health just like you would treat your physical health. And it was really fun, too, because I had, like, my big cutout Henry, and the kids would get to come up and we would spell out Henry. It was an acronym. Don't ask me to say it because I probably can't remember it off the top of my head.
I remember working through the school program and what are we going to do and all of that.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. And now working in a school, it's also really cool looking back on some of those experiences and, you know, working in a school now and seeing, like, the way that everything works and looking back on going into the schools, I'm like, that's why they did X, Y, Z, or, you know, so it's fun.
So what's your favorite memory from your time as Miss Texas? The rattlesnake roundup, I'm sure.
So it's actually really interesting. My favorite memory was getting to meet a little girl who had brain cancer. And this happened in, I want to say, May. So it was one of my last appearances that I did as Miss Texas.
What, do you know? Where were you?
So I was with, her name is Leah. She runs an organization called Leah's Kids, and she basically puts on parties for kids who have cancer to kind of make their little wish come true. And this little girl, her name was Addie, she loved princesses, and so they invited me, and then they also had, like, Anna and Elsa dressed up, so it was super cute. I can't remember the exact, like, name of her brain cancer, but it's one that is common in children, and it's really bad. She did end up passing away, but I remember any time after that people would ask me, like, what was your favorite appearance? That was the one that always came to my mind, because getting to see the way that, you know, she was suffering, like, she was suffering at that point in time, and getting to see, like, how just wearing a crown was something that brought her joy and positivity was really cool. And then it's kind of weird looking back on what my life was going to end up looking like in the next couple of months. But yeah.
So you give up your title, you get engaged.
Yes.
And then a few months later, Garrett gets diagnosed with brain cancer.
Yes.
What, I mean, I don't know how much you can tell about that journey without falling apart, but walk everybody through, like, what was that like for you walking alongside him?
Wild. So Garrett and I, we got engaged in July, and he started showing symptoms, I want to say, like 2 to 3 weeks after that. His right arm would go numb, but only for, like, a split second, and then it would be totally fine. I can remember exactly where we were. We were meeting some friends for dinner at Chewy's the first time that it happened. He was like, my arm just went numb, and I was like, that's weird. But then it happened again, and I was like, what's going on here? And then he started getting the constant headaches. And we were actually at dinner one night with my parents, and Garrett looked at us. He was like, something's wrong. Like, I don't know what it is, but something is not right. And so I ended up driving him to the ER, and it was kind of one of those things where there were a ton of people in the ER. So when the nurse came to get him from the lobby after he had a CT scan to take us back to a room, it was like, something's wrong. Mm-hmm. And I can remember the doctor coming in and telling him, you have a mass on your brain. And I remember Garrett's face. I remember seeing my hands like shaking in front of me. And then he was transferred from that small ER that we were in to the big hospital in Tyler. And he ended up having surgery 4 days later, was his first brain surgery. And at the time, we were told that the tumor was benign, and that they call it a meningioma, I think. I can't say it exactly how it's supposed to be said, but they're low grade. They grow really slow. And, at that point in time, it was like, okay, we're going to get through this. And when you go through something like that with someone, you automatically grow closer to them. And, that night that we found out that he had a tumor, I feel like my love for him just like grew exponentially, which obviously I loved him so much. Wouldn't have said yes to marrying him if I didn't love him. But like our love just grew so much, even in that like short period of time. And so we went on about our lives. He blew us away with how quickly he recovered from that surgery. Like within a week, he was back to normal life. Like he was
a rock star.
Yeah, a rock star. That's a perfect word for it. And then I remember where I was when I got a call from him that said, hey, I just got the pathology report. Can you come over? And I was like, what does it say? And he said, I just want you to come over. And so I drove over to his apartment, and he had it like pulled up on his computer screen, and it said, this is a malignant epithelioid neoplasm consistent with glioblastoma. And I had at this point in time, was in grad school to be a speech pathologist, and my supervisor had worked at MD Anderson. Mm-hmm. And in speech, we do a lot with the brain, like neurologically, things like that. And she had told me the one word that you don't want to hear is glioblastoma. And so
that had just been told to you.
Yes, I had just heard her tell me, like, it's a good thing that it's benign, The one thing you don't want to hear is glioblastoma. And then reading it on his computer screen, it was just devastating. And after that, that was in November. He began treatment in December. It was like over the Christmas holiday into January. And then a couple months after that, he had several scans, and they decided that he needed to have another surgery. So in May of 2023, he had an awake craniotomy.
Ooh.
It was 8 hours, and we actually FaceTimed him in the middle of it because they had him awake talking because his tumor sat really closely to the language center in his brain, and they wanted to make sure that he didn't lose that function, which I think is really great that they were focused on preserving his functioning at that point in time too, as well as like his grip in his right hand. But so I had that surgery in May, and then he recovered really well after that one too, and was doing great. He
was like the little engine that could.
He just kept going. Yeah. he was determined that he was going to be okay. And then I would say the turning point of our journey was probably in August of 2023.
You were set to get married in September.
Yeah. So he had an infection in his brain. So he ended up having 2 more brain surgeries within 6 weeks of each other. So in August to clean out the infection, but then it like continued persisting until the week before our wedding. It was September 18th. He ended up back at MD Anderson for another surgery to confirm that he had the infection that we knew that he had. And then we ended up having to postpone our wedding. So we ended up getting married on September 30th, but we did it with like our friends and family. And then we had our big wedding in November of last year.
It was a really small, quaint.
Yes, yeah.
But you had posted something on your TikTok. If y'all don't follow her TikTok, what is your TikTok?
Mallory B. Pend, P-E-N-D, because Pendergast is too hard to spell. So.
Yes. Well, I love following you on TikTok because you share vulnerable snippets of your journey, like what you're currently dealing with, what you've dealt with before. And one of the things that you posted, and it may have been TikTok, may have been Instagram, either way, or both, but about what a miracle it was that he was able to stand and like not only be out of the hospital, but be able to withstand even the ceremony.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Yes. So I got a call from my mother-in-law. So at this point in time, you know, I was in grad school when he got diagnosed, and then I started my job at an elementary school. Or actually, I graduated from Baylor on the day that Garrett had to have his emergency surgery to clean out the infection the first time. It was August 12th, 2023. And so didn't go to my graduation, obviously. Had to be there for Garrett.
No contest.
It does not matter. Not a problem. So he had that emergency surgery, and then he got a little bit better, and then it started to kind of decline again, and he was in a lot of pain. I have, even after that, in the spring of this year, that was still the most pain that I ever saw him in, and it was just heart-wrenching watching him. But because I had just started my job, it was a lot of getting support from other people to kind of be with him if I needed to be back in Tyler to do my job. And so we had gone to College Station, and his mom decided, you know, things are just not getting better, so I'm going to take him back to the emergency room at MD Anderson in Houston. And I decided to come back to Tyler to work, because at that point in time, like, he was going to MD Anderson, he was going to be in the best place that he needed to be. He had support from his family. But I got a call from his mom on that Monday, it was September 18th, that said, you need to come to Houston because things are not looking good, and the doctors are saying that they might keep him comfortable at this point.
That's never a good thing to hear.
Yeah, so I drove to Houston. My parents went with me, angels. They drove me down to Houston.
I don't think I could have driven.
I didn't drive. My dad drove.
Yeah, you would need your mom, dad to take me.
Yes. So they drove me down to Houston, and when I got there, he couldn't talk. He could hardly hold his eyes open. He just had so much like swelling in his brain from the infection that it did look really, really bad. So they ended up doing another surgery because at that point in time, there was a question of if it was tumor or if it was infection. And if it was tumor, then the course of action was to keep him comfortable. If it was infection, antibiotics. Yeah. I actually begged the surgeon on the phone. Garrett's mom was meeting with the surgeon, and I'm on the phone driving from Tyler to Houston. And I remember just like basically yelling at him, not like aggressively, but like crying, yelling, like, please do something. Like, you have to do something. We're supposed to get married in the next couple of weeks. Like, please do something. And his brother actually talked about it in his best man speech. He was like, you yelled at the doctors for us. We really appreciated that. But he agreed to do surgery, and it was just for biopsy to see what it was, and it turned out it was bacterial meningitis, and they put him on an antibiotic, and it was like that. he started getting better. And it was crazy because seeing him in the state that he was to watching, well, I didn't watch him walk down the aisle. He watched me walk down the aisle. Yeah. But to seeing him able to
even stand
on that day, was a miracle.
And have the stamina to be
alert
and able.
Yeah. And he did great.
Did y'all write your own vows?
We didn't. We decided that we didn't want to do that.
We didn't either. I just never, it wasn't important to me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But so we got married and it was the best ever. Ended up having to get care flighted from Tyler in October. I think it was like middle October, down to Houston because he was having more swelling in his brain because the tumor was regrowing. And they put him on a new treatment, and that treatment worked really great for a couple of months. And then, unfortunately, in January, February is when we really started seeing the cancer becoming very aggressive. What's actually really interesting about Garrett's case is his tumor metastasized outside of the central nervous system, which is pretty rare for brain cancer. I think when I did my Google research, it's like 16 cases have been reported of brain tumors metastasizing to other parts of the body. So the first metastasis that he had was in his spine, and then it metastasized to his scalp. Wow. So he had a tumor on his scalp that you could see from the outside, and that they ended up removing, and he had to have a whole like reconstructive surgery. And then it metastasized to his bones all over his body, to his liver, to his lungs, basically just took over his body. The PET scan that we saw in April was one that just was like a gut punch, just seeing it. But he ended up in the hospital in April, and then we went home on hospice in May, and then it was less than a week later that he ended up passing. So
one of the most, I think, amazing things about your journey with Garrett is his undenying faith through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I remember you posting something, and I'm going to quote it all wrong, but about him saying something about wanting to be in the military at one point because if he could save a life, that he would rather die to save someone else, and that if he could save lives through this journey. Yeah. And I just thought that was so beautiful, and yet, I mean, sad but beautiful. And so can you talk a little about like just what that journey's been like? Because now I feel like that's part of your, I want to say calling, is to remind people that even though you're going through like these horrifyingly difficult things, like God hasn't left you. And that's powerful to me. So feel free to share what you want.
Yes. So when we found out that it was cancer, I started a note in my phone. I titled it Garrett Moments. And it started out, it was just like little things that he would say to me that I wanted to remember. And, you know, looking back, I think Garrett knew from the moment that he was diagnosed that it was going to take his life. For some reason, I really let myself believe that he could be the one to beat it. And so when I started the note, it wasn't necessarily that I thought that I was going to be in this position that I'm in right now, looking back on these things that he said, but he just had so much wisdom to share all the time. And I'm just...
It's like a Holy Spirit thing.
Yes, it really was. It would just like knock me off my feet every time he would say it. But the thing that you're, or the quote that you are referencing, he said that he wanted to be in the military because he always thought like that's how he wanted to die. He wanted to sacrifice himself so that somebody else could live. But he said that this journey was cool because if somebody else got eternal life, that was so much more important. And so if his life was being used as a sacrifice for somebody else to receive eternal life, then it was worth it. And so it's been really amazing for me and for his family and our friends to see the way that people are receiving eternal life through it. And I'm going to throw her under the bus, but like my best friend has come to really get into her faith because of Garrett. And for me, like, that's such a huge thing, because all throughout college, like, I just wanted her to know the faith and, like, to know a relationship with Jesus. And so
here we go.
Garrett actually bought her a Bible in 2023. It was like the summer 2023, because he wanted her to know Jesus, and to see the way that her faith has kind of come out through this has been just one example of the way that lives are being changed and will continue to be changed through his story.
So how, and I know it's like a work in progress each and every day to go through life, knowing that you have to wait until the other side of heaven to see him again. Like, what is your advice to women who have, lost a husband, or people who are, have someone who's battling cancer? Yeah. And and it's terminal. Like, what's your advice, if any?
Goodness. So many things. We would be here for hours. One thing that I've found a lot of encouragement in recently, because it is really hard. It's a daily battle. And like today, I don't know, today I'm feeling okay, and I'm not. Other days I would be a blubbering mess. It's just, and that's grief. Like, grief is so weird. And I've been going to counseling, and I have a phenomenal grief counselor. We share the same faith, so it's really great. But it really is a wave of, like, they're not lying when they say that grief comes in waves. But I was reading a Bible study last week. Last week we actually, I celebrated the 1-year anniversary of our wedding on September 30th. So that week was hard. It was also my birthday on the 25th, and so him not being there for those moments, that hit pretty hard. But that week I was reading a Bible study, and it said something that really stood out to me. It said, "What do you do when the answer to your prayer request is no?" And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I hadn't necessarily thought it, but I think that it was in there. Like, that emotion and that feeling was in there, because we prayed that he would be healed. We prayed that the cancer would go away. We prayed, and we had so many people praying with us, like hundreds.
And that's really hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. And so it said, "What do you do when the answer is no?" And it was, I find myself when I'm reading the Bible, or when I'm hearing stories of people being healed, I'm like, well, why did that not happen for Garrett? Like, and she talked about Jesus, and when he was about to be crucified, and he's in the garden of, I can't say it, the garden of
Gethsemane?
Yeah, that one. I don't know why I cannot say that word. It's so hard for me to say. He prayed that the Lord would take the cup from him, and obviously the answer to that was no. And he had to be crucified for all of us to have salvation. And I look at the world now as it is, and like the amount of people who are going to have eternal life because Jesus went to the cross. And so I think there is a purpose in suffering. And so that is, I may never know why things had to happen the way that they did. I question it every day. I'm like, why did it have to happen? Why did it have to be Garrett? Like, why did it have to be us? But see, here comes the tears. Like, why? But God does have a plan, and that's all I can really cling to find encouragement. So,
wait, I'm gonna backpedal and go back in time for a minute and change the subject, sorta ish.
Good.
To look at you now, but I may cry through this. But to look at you now, because like I said, I met you when you were about 8. But I started working with you when you were like 13, starting your Miss Texas journey in the teen program. And I remember of your sisters, you appeared to be the meek one, right? And you would have your tallest by far, 5'11". Yeah. But you always appeared to be the softer spoken, the meek one. And I'm not comparing you to your sisters, but in this scenario, it takes someone who is so incredibly strong. And so to like, no. When, I mean, I specifically am thinking about a time when you were doing a mock interview and it was at a mock pageant with the Miss Fort Worth organization, I do believe. And literally I'm on the panel and you walk in and it's almost like, I don't even think you knew I was going to be on the panel. And you walk in and you're just like, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to stand here. I'm just going to stand here and have like no words. And because I care too much about what other people think. I care too much about pleasing people or impressing people or whatever. The transformation's unreal. And obviously there's a lot of time that's happened in between these moments. But if I would have known then the type of things you were going to endure and whatnot, I mean, it's amazing that the skills and the things that God gave you and qualities throughout all of these years in order to not just make it through this journey, but to survive it with grace and just strength. So incredibly. I'm fascinated. I'm proud of you. I'm excited for whatever God is going to give you on the other side of all of this. And you're going to still have grief. I know that. And you'll never replace Garrett. Like, I know that. But the Lord is blessing other people through you, and I see it, and you have the strength to share. And it just, I don't know if you've thought about this at all, but to me, it's like 13-year-old Mallory couldn't share anything. And, y'all, it's true. And today, you're being vulnerable every day. And then you're helping kids get their voice. Isn't that remarkable? I don't know. It just gets me.
I honestly, I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and I'm like, I don't know where it's coming from. And I say that because it truly is only God. Like, and He has also given me what I would consider just like a supernatural strength. Because even in the couple of weeks after he passed, like, I remember getting up and going to work. I was working part-time at a clinic over the summer and getting up and going to work and being like, how am I functioning right now? Like, if you would have told me on that night that they told us that he had a brain tumor, because, that will just like,
That's haunting.
Yeah. If you would have told me that night that I would be able to still function after he passed, I would laugh in your face and say, no, I'm not going to be okay. I'm not going to be able to continue going. And so it's almost a weird, like, out-of-body experience in some way of, like, how am I functioning? And the only answer is God. Like, literally, He has given me a strength that I can't even explain.
So I always ask everybody the same question, which it seems so silly at this point after this whole story, but it's a question I ask everyone, and I'm going to ask you anyway.
Okay.
How do you define winning?
Oh, goodness. Oh, man. I think so many ways, even taking my experiences over the last 2 years out of this, I think growing and becoming the very best version of yourself is winning. Because I think so many times, especially in the pageant world, we compare ourselves to other people. We think that, I don't have this talent, so I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, Z. But we are all very different people, and God creates all of us very different with different gifts and different talents. And I think whenever you step into who you are as a person and just grow yourself in not grow yourself. Let yourself be refined by God. And like that's winning, becoming the best version of yourself, even if you never, win the title or anything like that. So.
What I loved about your journey to Miss Texas, because I was there for the whole however many years. How many years total from teen to?
Oh, goodness. I used to know this number off the top of my head.
Well, you've had a lot of other 10? Numbers in your brain.
10 years? 9 years. I started in 2012, and I won in 2021. So, is that?
Yeah.
That's 9 years,
9 years. Yeah.
Math.
Long time. Math is hard. Well, you're not a mathematician.
I'm not a mathematician.
You're fine. It's all good. I remember the year that you won Miss Texas, I felt like you were the most, well, first of all, you gave yourself the freedom to win. Mm-hmm. I feel like there was a time in which your sister was pursuing the same goal, and so
held myself back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you reserved a spot.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you held yourself back, but I think you allowed her to shine, and that was also very humble. You're that's just who you are. And honestly, Madison's journey is Madison's journey, and I need to interview her too. So just saying, Madison, come on. But she held that title of Miss Texas, and then, but it was a couple years later before you were able to secure the spot. Part of like COVID happened and all the things, right?
But what's interesting is, and I think timing, like God's timing, is so important. If we would have gone to Miss Texas that year, I genuinely believe that I would not have won. I don't think I was not supposed to win until 2021. Yeah. So, and I spoke on this in the beginning, like meeting Garrett, like that was so transformative for me.
And you may not have, if you would have been Miss Texas in 2019,
I may not have met
Garrett. So it all worked out the way that it was supposed to. And I remember that year too, leading up to Miss Texas, you were like, I want to, it wasn't just turn every stone. It was, I want to become the best version of me. I want to know that if I were to win, that I can not only do the job, but do it really, really, really well. And so I loved the fact that you took advantage of the directive affirmation, which is awesome, which we'll talk about in our Patreon episode. We'll probably talk through that. But
I do want to say something about the directive affirmation. So Garrett watched all of that. He watched me practicing having a directive affirmation. And it was at one point in his cancer journey that he was, oh my goodness, he was so strong, but like I was a mess. And honestly, like I think I probably needed to be a mess during that period of time to like be strong now. But I remember one day he was like, you know how you used to tell yourself all of those like affirming things when you were getting ready to be Miss Texas? And I was like, yes. And he was like, you need to do that now. Like, you need to tell yourself, like, that everything's going to be okay. And, like, basically telling me I needed to have a directive affirmation for his cancer journey. So, anyways,
you can use it for anything.
I think that's really interesting. But
those of you who are wondering, what on earth is directive affirmation? My father is the founder of the mental management system, and part of it is building self-image, and you build that through changing your imprints. And one of the strategies and tools that we use is a directive affirmation, which is a paragraph of the person that you want to become. And you read it and rehearse it 10 to 15 times a day. It's a remarkable tool. But Mallory used it multiple times as Miss Texas, even not just in preparation to become Miss Texas, but then even during your year when you wanted to overcome, because there's challenges during the year too. So for our Patreon members, if you're a pageant person and you want to join my She Wins Patreon channel, we're going to pick her brain about how did she handle the year of Miss Texas and how did she handle all those struggles. And I don't know if you'll spill any tea or not, but we're just going to have fun there. But I remember you just truly wanting to become the best and strongest version of you, which I can't help but believe was also just preparation for not even pageant, not even being Miss Texas, but being able to handle the journey that lay ahead that you didn't even know was coming.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. I really did in that. It was January 2021 when I felt like things really started changing. So it was a couple months after I met Garrett, but I started going to counseling, and I started on like a physical health journey too, because I think I've always kind of had a unhealthy relationship with food, and so it was just getting my body into the healthiest point. Right. I ended up losing like 40 pounds.
But healthily.
Yes. But I wanted to be the best version of myself mentally, physically, spiritually. Like my faith and my relationship with Jesus was probably it was a huge proponent of that too.
And then you go to Miss America. And you won a preliminary award. One of my favorite moments ever was to be there in the audience to watch you deliver the speech of a lifetime and win an award, especially knowing that we worked on that together. Like, that was kind of fun to know.
And what's interesting is I had to call you that day. You remember? I woke up that day and I was not mentally tough.
You were in a
crumbling.
Like there was something going on.
I was crumbling, and it took you and my counselor to pull me up out of that, and God. And then what came of it was so cool. You know, like, I don't know. I look back at that day, and I'm like, wow, that was a really cool day. I'd started it really
doubtful.
Fragile.
I feel like you were doubtful. Yeah. But I think what it showed too is that you can flip the switch quickly.
Oh yeah.
It's not something that you have to be crippled by. Did it take a couple of people talking to you and giving you advice that you needed to hear in order to like unlock what you needed? Yeah. But did you win the award? Yeah. And it was beautiful, and then you placed in the top 10. Which was top so 10. Cool.
Yeah. I know.
So cool.
Wild. Who was that person?
I don't know, but I'll take who you are now.
Me too. Yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to, we already know how to follow your TikTok. What's your Instagram?
It's the same thing. It's Mallory B. Penned.
Okay. What's next for you?
Good question. Great question. Man.
Just working?
Yeah, I'm just working. And
will you ever build a ministry, like an actual nonprofit around Garrett's memory?
I hope so. Yeah.
I think that would be beautiful.
It's so wild to me because after Miss America, honestly, I remember praying. I was like, God, like I still want, like I want to make a difference somehow. And I do, like I want to be able to share not only like that joy can still be found even in the worst of circumstances. And I think Garrett was such an amazing example of that. Like, he never stopped smiling. We were going home on hospice, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to go home and I'm going to get better. And I was like, he never stopped smiling. And I just want to be able to share that with people and share about the strength that comes from having a relationship with Jesus.
I'm excited to see what happens with that.
Me too.
I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be amazing.
I don't know what it's going to be either.
Well, we'll stay tuned. We'll have you back whenever you have it all established and you can share about it.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you for walking us down memory lane, even though it was a hard and challenging road.
Yeah.
And thank you for being you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Share this with a friend if you would like. Join my Patreon membership if you want to, especially if you're a pageant person, because I will be picking Mallory's brain. Maybe we'll talk about directive affirmations.
Okay.
Maybe we'll talk about some of the biggest or hardest moments as a title holder, or the strength that it takes to do that. And who knows, maybe you'll even share some tips and advice that you would have now after going through the last couple of years that you would tell yourself today. Yeah. We'll see. Have a blessed rest of your day, everybody.